right. Julie, Corey, welcome to the Breakthrough Society. How are you guys?
We're great. Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here and give some entertainment, hopefully, and maybe a little bit of value to your listeners.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, for sure. My pleasure. So, first off, just tell the audience who you guys are and what do y'all do?
Go ahead.
We are co-founders of SB Pace, which is a boutique coaching and consulting firm that focuses exclusively on small businesses. And we started it as a direct result of the pandemic as a way to help small businesses. Probably the number one thing that we do is help entrepreneurs launch their first businesses, which is really exciting. And we've got some really great partners that we work with to help people bring their dreams to fruition when it comes to working for themselves and, no longer being a slave to the man. And we have a podcast and we wrote a best-selling book.
Awesome. And where are you guys located at?
We're in Richmond, Virginia.
Sorry. I'm giving Julie direction over here. She keeps looking at me. She needs to look at the screen.
Well, I'm looking at him because so when we're doing our own podcast, we're really good at like knowing who's going to ask the next question or comment and volleying back and forth. But for some reason, we seem to be stutter stepping this one.
I'm not stutter stepping anything. The rule is that Julie always does the introduction.
Yes.
She gives the pitch of who we are. So we're located in Richmond, Virginia. We help small businesses.
You guys can just go like back and forth, like somebody answers like the next one first, and then okay.
Okay, fair enough.
We got this. Julie's just being difficult today.
Yeah.
Every day, Irvin, every day.
Yeah. So what were y'all doing prior to the pandemic or prior to you creating SB Pace?
So prior to this, both Julie and I were consulting, doing like consulting work. So as independent consultants, Julie was working for one of the big four companies around the country. I was kind of just filling in here and there, finding work wherever I could. Prior to that, we had both worked together at a company. That's where we initially met, was working for this company as a national food distributor. And we worked on an M&A team, basically, although it was more like process and business transformation and that type of stuff. But we traveled around the country to various warehouses for this company and helped integrate them into the new processes, because they would go out and buy companies and they just did a terrible job of integrating them into their business. And so our job was to go out there, help them with their culture, with processes, with technology and all of that, and get them integrated into the company.
Yeah. And, so interestingly enough, when we were on the team together, I was Corey's boss. And now, even though we're co-founders, he's kind of the boss of me. So the tables have flipped a little bit. And much to my dismay, it was a process team. I thought it was a M&A integration team. And then I found out like, this is really just a process team. That's all we do. Is we're helping people optimize their businesses, which is a really good thing, but I'm not really the best at process. So
yeah. So it's like funny how you guys are doing this for this other company now because of the pandemic, like a year that was like the worst year, for a lot of people, right? That complain a lot. But you guys use that to just like start off your own thing. You got SB Pace now, and then you guys have the podcast too. So it's a blessing in disguise.
It really was. And it was great. But that first year was really tough. I'm trying to talk Corey into either writing a second book, which he does a hard pass on, or doing a different, launching a second podcast that's all about the first year, right? Because that first year it's just filled with highs and lows. And those lows, oh my God, they're like the valley of despair. They are so low sometimes. And you're like, you question yourself so frequently. What are we doing? And support doesn't come from where you think it's going to. And the money isn't flowing in. Like, we walked into it thinking with this sort of notion of if we build it, they will come. So not fucking true. So not true.
And one of the interesting things that we figured out fairly quickly was we thought that we were going to, with our background and knowledge and expertise, we were going to help small businesses who needed to get through the pandemic, whether it was improving what they do or once things kind of started to settle down, improving processes, working on rehiring, integrating their staff, et cetera, et cetera. But the majority of our business actually came from people who were starting businesses. And it didn't make sense until we stepped back and looked at it. It's like, well, when the pandemic hit, what did we do? We started a business. Like, we took control of the situation. And that's what I think a lot of people did over the past 15 months is part of like the whole labor shortage thing is everybody's like, oh, people are lazy. They don't want to go back to work. And certainly that's a part of it. But a lot of people don't want to go back to working for somebody else. A lot of people figured out that this was a good excuse to change their life for the better. So if they were working some shitty, whatever, 9-to-5 job that they hated, now they can go out and find a new job, or they can go start their own thing and just kind of like it's a refresh, a reset on society and the labor force for the most part. And so that's been really interesting, is just talking to people who are using it in a positive way.
Yeah, like I saw something too about like during so everything started back in March, right, last year. So I think like the number of investors in like the stock market and crypto and all that just skyrocketed too, because people were looking for other avenues to make money because they realized that their job wasn't as secure as they thought it was.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of people who sort of had this notion that having a job working for someone else means security, and then realized very quickly it actually is the exact opposite of security.
Well, and then not to mention everybody who, like, the whole concept of going into the office to work. Employers and naive managers like to think that people are putting in their solid 8 hours. They're getting 8 hours of work. But how many people actually work a full 8 hours while they're at absolutely nobody? And so I think a lot of people realize, like, all that time that they spent dicking around on Facebook or whatever, and they're trying to hide from their boss. They're like, oh, well, now I can spend that time looking at the stock market or crypto or figuring out something else that I want to do, because realistically, there isn't 8 hours of work for me to do every day.
Yeah, I think like Gary Vee was the one that said one time where he's like, people think they're working like 40 hours a week, but they're really like every day they're eating for an hour. They're going to the restroom for another hour throughout the day. They're on their phone for fucking 2 hours. And at the end of the week, it's like they only work like 4 hours, but they think, they're putting in their time and stuff like that. So like, I get that. And like one of the fellow our team member, Roy Edwards, he's putting me on his system where he creates like a cloud-based system where your whole company can work remote. So that's what they do. Like, they don't have an office space. They don't have anything. All of the employees work remote. So there's no need to go in the office and spend that time driving and like going and being at the office on your phone and stuff like that. They can do everything at home.
And that's such a great thing that actually came out of the pandemic, and a conversation that I've had with numerous people. I was up in the DC area not too long ago, and there's a lot of obviously government and the federal employees up there. And some guy I was talking to who worked for the Department of Defense said that they were really concerned because obviously Department of Defense, they need to have security in place for the, IT security, all of that. But they figured out how they could work from home, and they were able to do it well. And then they started talking about bringing people back into the office, and all of the older people were like, oh yeah, it's gonna be good to go back in the office. But the younger people started putting in applications to transfer, because you have, like, there's no sense in driving, especially up there in Northern Virginia, driving an hour to and from work every day to do the exact same work that you're doing from home. And so, like, all of the money that can be saved from renting offices, from those utilities, from, just the quality of life from people. And we're getting to a deliverables based type of work where it's in this 40-hour period of time, you need to do this much work, and that's it. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to understand or comprehend, is that I don't need 40 hours to do all of that work. I can get it done in 20, I can get it done in 30, and you still make the same amount of money.
Yeah, I would be curious how many businesses are looking at that and saying, like, putting people, more of their employees as sort of these fractional employees, right? They're part-time, where, you're working, and it's almost like it's a consulting model, right? Like, the job you have, you're really only working 20 hours. It's only 20 hours worth of work a week. So that's all you're expected of. But now and so to supplement your income, you go out and you find other people that you can do, another 20 hours or 30 hours of work for. And it becomes more of this consultant based model, or a fractional employee type of a model, and it gives you more freedom and flexibility as an employee to do work that you really, really enjoy and that you really love. And I think that's one of the big things that happen to people, is they realize, like, this job sucks. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm not passionate about it. I'm going to go do the things that I want to be passionate about. And, started and decided to start businesses. And it was really nice to see new people starting businesses, because so many, and we all know what COVID and the government did to small businesses over the last 15 months. It was almost like it was this, like, deliberate, nefarious plan to, like, just eliminate small businesses. And I think a lot of people looked at it that way. Like, they were trying to just knock out the small businesses because they have much less control over a small business than they do over, big major corporations.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that Andy was talking about, where, like, he believes that, like how you're saying, that the government's plan, or, like, I don't know if it was just him, but many other people, like, I think were saying that the government's plan was pretty much to eliminate the small businesses and some of the medium-sized businesses, and then that way the only businesses that actually thrive are the big-ass corporations, right? Like Amazon and like all these fucking billion-dollar businesses. So, like, it's pretty harsh. But yeah. And another thing that you were saying was the having fractional employees, which is pretty much like having, I guess, subcontracting like every single thing within the company, right? So, like, people being able to go out and do their own thing, kind of like for multiple different businesses or people, right? Like, it allows them more freedom, more money, kind of thing. So, like, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
And I hope it stays that way, because as an employer, you need to look at it as, to me, it's worth $60,000 a year to pay somebody to do X.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it takes them 40 hours a week, 100 hours a week, whatever it is. Like, this is what the value is to me to deliver that work. And as long as people don't change that to be like, oh, well, it's taking you half the time, that way, therefore, I'm going to pay you half as much. That's where, like, that balance is going to have to come. Because again, if like, I know a lot of people, I mean, you're milking the clock, but because you want the hours, but you're also milking the clock because you don't want to make it look like your job isn't important. So you're getting paid. I've worked with plenty of people who are in data entry and that type of stuff, and they would take the full day to get their work done, because if they did it early, they were concerned that they were going to lose their job. They would get paid less, or they would consolidate, because that's the way that big businesses look at that. It's like, well, if you could do two people's work in the same amount of time, let's get rid of one person and you just get to do twice the work.
Where I always think about that is when I'm at the grocery store and I'm checking out, and I'm like, if these people got paid by the number of people they checked out, we would have a completely different system going on here. But it always feels like they slow down as much as they possibly can for everybody who comes through their lane, because it's the less people they have to run through and ring up their groceries, the less work they have to do. I'm like, oh my God, can we change the structure here so we can move faster? But it always reminds me of that at the post office and at the grocery store, where I'm like, we need to change how we're compensating people.
I'm going to disagree with you just a bit on I agree with the post office and the DMV, because the post office, there is competition there, but like the DMV, there's no competition to the DMV. You can't go to the other privatized DMV, whatever, because this one sucks. But with grocery stores, I'm going to put half the blame on the people as well, because like the customers, because I don't know how many times I prefer the self-checkout, but if I get stuck in a lane and I have to go, deal with a human, there's inevitably the person in front of me is just not ready to check out. Like, they finished scanning, they haven't helped bag at all. Like, and then the person's like, oh, it's $150 for their groceries. And then they decide to look for their checkbook. And I'm like, who writes a checkbook? And are you surprised right now that you have to pay for this food? Like, you should be ready to go to write that amount in. You should be ready to go to put in your PIN number, whatever it is. But they don't. Like, and I'm like, come on. Like, this shouldn't be a surprise. This is not the first time you bought groceries.
There is definitely a system at the grocery store, and you are correct. Part of it is the customer, but part of it is also the checkouter person, the cashier. I guess we would call them, is slow.
Yeah, I mean, I put my groceries in order. Like, I make sure that like the fragile stuff's at the back so that it goes on top.
Samesies.
Put it together in terms of like when I get home, all of this is going in the refrigerator, all of this is going in the pantry. Make my life easy. You know?
Samesies. I'm the same way.
Now, when I go to these places, I'm gonna actually like think about this shit and really pay attention.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You
I
will
want to
not
be like,
to see it.
yeah. Then I'll be like, because it is true. Because if they get paid by the customer that they check out, I mean, they can. I'm pretty sure they can get an amount, just by the average, like the past month or whatever. And they get paid that amount. They're gonna want to go quicker. They're gonna want to make more money. So, like, that just helps the company overall.
Exactly, performance-based pay.
Well, I think it was FedEx or UPS, one of those where they went to instead of paying people by the hour, they paid them by the job, basically. So if you could get all of these planes loaded, all of these trucks loaded in 6 hours, you could leave early and you'll get paid for an 8-hour day. And lo and behold, they were able to get everything done a lot quicker when they were just getting paid to do the work for the day instead of getting paid by the hour.
Man, lots of businesses need to read the case study on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the one thing too that I've been since I founded the Power List, like I'm also, I know like Andy talks about this a lot, where like you have the Power List, your 5 things you need to get done for the day. If you get it done by noon, you're done for the day. So I've been kind of looking at it like that too, like within my business, not specifically like the people that go out to the job site, because you have to physically be there in a service-based business. But like say somebody that's working in a warehouse or somebody working in an office, like as long as you get your shit done for the day, like everything else you do is extra, or you can leave early. So I've been kind of like seeing it like that a little bit.
That's interesting. Do you so you use the Power List to sort of dictate your stuff that you have to do for work for your business, and when that's done, excluding like if you have to be out like at a customer site, like when those things on the Power List are done, your day is locked and loaded and you're good to go.
Yeah, and sometimes like when I do finish it early, because stuff that's on my list is things that I need to do, like say here, me sitting down here. Right, like it doesn't include stuff that I have to go do out in the job site. But whenever I finish the list, if I finish it by 2 p.m., 3 p.m., like I literally, the rest of the day I can do what I want, or I can do extra stuff, but I feel like I just wasted the whole day. It's weird.
Right. Did you buy the new Power List book that he had?
Yeah, it's actually just got shipped, I think, yesterday.
Mine just arrived yesterday, so I ordered 2 of them. I'm going to give one to Corey. We're going to try that out and see how that works. So yeah, I just got them, and I actually am impressed with the quality. I don't know why I am. I mean, Andy's stuff is good, but I'm excited to start using it.
Yeah, I've just been using my notebook, but yeah, like I'm pretty excited for it to arrive.
This is news to me.
I know. So you're welcome. Dropping surprises today.
Yeah. Early Christmas.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so like whenever you guys made the shift, like I'm curious, like did you guys make the shift to leave the company that you were working with at the same time, or was it like unplanned, kind of to start doing your own thing, or how did that work out?
It was so I was on a contract. I was working for one of the big 4 consulting firms. I was actually doing like third-party consulting for them, and my assignment was scheduled to end on March 27th. And I literally was watching throughout the month of March that every opportunity they had for other assignments was just drying up as COVID was getting worse and worse. And so shortly before it ended, Corey and I had a conversation where we're like, we both had some money in the bank, and we're like, it started out truly as, let's call on, we have a lot of people in our network that are small business owners and entrepreneurs, and we started calling on them to see if they needed help, right? Because so many people they were really confused over what was happening. Information was coming in very fast and it was changing almost daily. And so people didn't know, like, what can I do with my business? What should I expect to happen? Can I be open? Am I safe? Like, what do finances? And a lot of people didn't know how much money, like how long they could make it. And so financially, like they knew how much money they had, but they didn't know how long that was going to, like how long they could last without any sort of additional income coming in. And so we started calling on friends and family to see if they need any help, to ask them questions about how they were positioned, like what did they have, was there any pivots they could make. And that's how the business started, was doing that. And I'll let Corey tell you what he was up to before we launched.
So my like last big contract ended in the middle of 2019, and I spent some time in 2019 just like I renovated a bathroom. I went and like did some traveling and hiking and that type of stuff. And I had I just got back from Alaska, so I had like just a short-term contract where I was working up in Alaska, and I was in the meantime working on opening up a restaurant. So I was going through all of that. This is beginning of 2020. Into like middle of 2019 into 2020, I was getting all my ducks in a row to get this restaurant going. And then in February of 2020, I've got a lease in my hands for a space, and I'm like, let me just hold on to this for a couple weeks and just see where this where this goes before I sign anything. So I was like, in the meantime, was just trying to like just find some jobs here and there to fill the gaps, because I was planning on, I'm just going to open up a restaurant, and that's obviously going to be my full-time job. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and so that's where the story. So I obviously didn't sign that lease then. I did sign the lease back in April, so that restaurant is happening hopefully this year. We're still dealing with the effects of the pandemic, but but that's where Julie and I, that's where that story kind of meets Julie's, in that I didn't have anything going on because I was working on a restaurant that was then put on hold for however indefinitely.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So like you guys help small businesses kind of like start off, especially. Like I created the podcast to help people that say they want to start a business, or they want to do, like I've gotten messages that people want to, they have ideas of doing, building a business or doing like big things, but they don't know how to start. They don't know what to do. So, I mean, what kind of like a guidance can you give them as far as like starting a business? Like have some friends that want to start like a car, like fix up cars, sell them kind of thing. So like if somebody wants to do something like that, or I have a couple of friends that have small clothing brands, what kind of guidance, advice do you give them?
It's, I mean, for most people, I mean, because that sounds a lot like where a lot of small business owners, where they start off as they've got what's basically a hobby. They've got something that they're interested in, a skill, whatever it is, and they're trying to figure out a way to monetize it. And I mean, that's a great way to start a business, especially if you have existing income from like a full-time job, so you're not pressed to get yourself into business. But the key is just building out that foundation if you have that time. I mean, even if you don't have the time, you need to do it, but if you have the luxury of time, is understanding everything that should go into that business and doing it right the first time. So that's building out your core values, your understanding your culture, looking at your hiring practices, figuring out your target market, like everything that goes into being a successful business, all of the strategies, your growth strategies, marketing strategies, et cetera, like doing all of that work ahead of time, because trying to do that on the fly, you're going to probably do it wrong, and it's going to cost you a ton of money in the back end to do it right. So getting it done correctly before you're pressed to get it done is probably the most important thing.
I would say build the strong foundation is critical, and making sure that there's a market for what you want to do, for what you're doing, is really important. We've seen a lot of people who kind of do it backwards, right? And then get really frustrated when the sales aren't there immediately, but it's like you haven't really tested the market. So you need to make sure. And honestly, I've never seen anybody better at doing that approach than Callie Keane, right? Who he has this podcast, the Red Blue, or that is not the name of his podcast. End Hype, right? Yes, his business is Red Blue Collective, and he is amazing at sort of doing those steps in the right order and testing the waters to make sure there's a demand for what you want to do, and being a understanding that it's hard work to start a business, but being really comfortable with the risk and the failure that comes along with it, and knowing that businesses are built on those consistent, daily, mundane, boring tasks, right? The money is in the mundane. If you really, really think about it when you were starting a business. And so it's exciting and it's fun, but there is a lot of muck and shit when you are getting started. And that most of our clients get really excited the first like 60 to 90 days because we're building it and getting ready to launch it. And then I remember one client we launched for, literally on his launch day, he said to us, "Whew, now all the hard work is over." And me and Corey just were like, "Brother, it is literally just starting." That was easy compared to what's about to happen. And I was so frustrated because he didn't get the sales that he thought he was going to get, right? He had this big projection for what he thought was going to happen as soon as like he launched, and it didn't happen. And it's really like important to set realistic expectations. It's great to have big goals, but you got to be really realistic about what's going to happen and know that, it is a fucking grind.
And just kind of play off that, keeping things simple when you start, because like, let's take a friend who wants to launch a line of clothing, they want a clothing brand or whatever. Like the first thing that everybody wants to, like the idea phase of any business is the most exciting phase. And they're like, oh, and we can do this and we can expect, like we can also do, I don't know, purses and wallets. And then we've got hats, and then we can start talking about, creating interiors for whatever. No, slow down. What do you do well? You make t-shirts, you make jeans, when I say one thing, it could be, just here's our clothing line. Do that one thing well, and then work on expanding your brand, because the first thing that's going to happen if you try and do too many things is you're just going to overextend yourself, and then you're just going to do a lot of things poorly instead of one thing well.
Yeah. And I'm going to add one more thing. Yeah. I think it is so important to understand the value of your time, especially if you are producing a product or you are doing all of the work yourself, right? So example, if you are doing the work on like customizing cars and selling them, or you're doing the work on making the t-shirts or making the purses, and you are a perfectionist, like you need to understand how much time things take you to do and what the value of your time is, or you're never going to price it correctly and you're never going to make any money. And a lot of people get that wrong because when you first start, you're so reluctant to like ask for the money that the product or service is actually worth. And then when you undervalue it, well, first off, it's always better to go undervalue than over when you first start out, because once you start lowering your prices, it's tough, right? But when you start out and you just, you're charging somebody $50 an hour or $50 for a product that takes you like 8 hours to make, that's just stupid. And you have to really, really understand what your time is worth.
Yeah, that's something that I'm reading this book, so like I realized the Profit First, but it's for contractors. That a whole problem, and I did this. I kind of still do it sometimes, where like I work in the project, and finishing up the project, but then I'm also working in the office where I price the product before, for the project before, and then even before that, whenever I go and look at the project, with my own eyes. So like I'm not pricing all of that, like the stuff before. So it's like that money isn't there kind of thing. So you're just like undervaluing yourself. So like I realized reading that book, like I realized these past few days where like how you're saying, like you just price to like it's just so undervalued that you don't even realize it. And yeah, go ahead, Corey.
Well, yeah, and for small business owners, everybody's trying to figure out a way that where they can cut costs and like, oh, I can do it myself. I'll just do it myself because they don't understand what their time is worth and they don't value their time like they should. And then you get into things like, for instance, for me, starting a restaurant, I'm going to pay somebody to do social media. That is something that it is like I can do. I don't have any social media myself, but I know enough about it that I can post something on the internet somewhere. But I know that I'm going to do it poorly, and any time that I spend on like doing social media marketing is going to be wasted time. So it's either don't do it, which I can't, or just pay somebody to do it, because otherwise it's just a waste. So I know for like now that I have to pay somebody, and it's not a lot of money, but people are like, oh, well, that money adds up and $200 here. And yeah, it does. But that $200 a week that I might spend, paying somebody to just make sure that the posts are happen and people are engaged with and all of that is time that I don't have to do it, and it's going to be done well. And in theory, that's going to pay for itself. And I've seen it happen. It that return on investment happens. So yeah.
Yeah, and then you can shift your focus to whatever it is your strength is, possibly make more money.
Yeah, exactly. Like training people, hiring the right people, working on the culture. I mean, the first couple of months is going to be spent, probably washing dishes and making margaritas. But, outside of that, like working on the things that I want to work on and the things that I'm good at, and pay somebody else to do the things that I don't want to do.
Yeah, that's like spending the whole day trying to do like power lists is something too. Was like, dude, I can barely like be sitting here for an hour like doing these interviews before like I start shaking my leg or wanting to just walk around the apartment or something. Like I can't be like sitting in the office all day type of thing. So eventually I got to start hiring people to take that position where they can be sitting down, if that's something that they do or that they like to do. But I'm the type where like I have to be moving all the time.
Oops, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, because that's just not my thing. It's just like sitting down all day.
Yeah, that knowing like where that line is for making the hire is a really tough thing for new business owners, right? Because you need to make sure that you've got you look at it first as a cost, right? To what it's the money that it's going to cost you to hire somebody, and you don't really think about the time piece of it, and you're trying to cover it with revenue that's coming in, and sometimes the answer is by hiring someone else to do the work, it frees you up to do the high value important things that are actually going to generate more revenue. So you got to take a little bit of a risk there, and that's a tough one for new entrepreneurs and new small business owners to understand and to work through.
Yeah, I'm kind of going through that right now, where I'm starting to reach out to more people, like how Corey was saying, like for the marketing. Like I'm not really a marketing person, but if you give me the ideas and the content, I can like start to work on it. But I'm like reaching out to other people to kind of help me out with all these stuff that I'm not too good at. But yeah, as we're running out of time here, we got about 4 minutes. Got to hop on another interview, but real quick before I ask you this last canned question, can you tell the audience where they can find you guys?
Everything that you need to know about our business can be found on our website, sbpace.com. We've got links to our podcast, Biz Quik Podcast, all of our social media links. Everything is on sbpace.com.
Awesome. Cool. So the last kind of question I have is, what do you guys consider your breakthrough moment?
Ooh, this I know. So there's a couple of them, right? At the 6-month mark, we had a really, really tough conversation because we both agreed. We only committed to 6 months when we first started, where we're like, okay, we're going to try this for 6 months and see how it's going. And we were kind of half in, half out for maybe the first 90 days where we were still, I think, both kind of looking for other things. And then we sat down and we're like, we got to we got to either go all in or we got to go all out, right? And so we decided to go all in. And at that 6-month mark, things weren't really where we thought they would be, but we both were like, yep, we're fully committed. And so that conversation was hard because we had to like really be very, very realistic about where the business was. And it wasn't where either one of us thought it was going to be, but we both saw the potential. And so we kept pushing forward. And then on day 367, it's exactly what day it was, we actually signed 3 clients on the same day. And that's when we're like, okay, we can do this. And, there's been a lot of times even since then where you kind of still question yourself, but knowing that there are people out there that are interested in us and want to work with us, that was a moment for me.
That was definitely a big moment, actually getting some revenue. That was nice. But for me, I don't know, it's just a lot of little things where you can just kind of feel the momentum shifting. It's like if you're watching any kind of sports game or whatever, there isn't like that one defining moment where a certain player makes a play or whatever. You can just tell that momentum has shifted. And it's just little tiny things throughout there where that are just and like, I mean, recently, and it has to do with our podcast, where all of a sudden, like, I feel like the momentum just kind of took off, really nothing that we did. It's just, it got to that tipping point where enough people were listening and enough people were sharing, where it's like a kind of like an exponential growth in that. And so it's just little things like that along the way that for me, just kind of like, you can just tell that the momentum's going in your direction. It's going in your favor.
Yeah. And like once you look, like you stop, you look back, and you're like, oh shit, the momentum's, it's there, like it's going.
Exactly.
And all of that momentum is built off of those consistent mundane things, right? It's all, sure. That's where it comes from. I think one other moment that was like really big for us breakthrough was we recently had somebody reach out to us who wanted to hire us, who neither one of us knew, who told us that when she was asking around about people to work for, 4 different people pointed her to us and said, you should go work with them.
Oh, wow.
And we haven't asked her who the 4 people were, but the fact that, she was like, you guys' name just keeps coming up and up and up. And I was like, that feels good. That feels really good.
Yeah, you guys must be doing something right.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed we continue it.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, I appreciate you guys for coming on and sharing all this. I'm very excited to see what you guys are doing in the near future.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Irvin. This was great.
For sure. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye. You have a good day.